They're highlighting tensions with the West. I'll be speaking to an anti-war protester who has risked his life to defy Russia's mobilisation policy, but he believes Putin won't dare press the nuclear button. Then at 5, it's Friday Focus. Just how safe is your pension? The Governor of the Bank of England told pension funds that they have until today to balance their books before emergency support for the bond market is removed. Now stay with me because that's all on the way in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So joining me today is my panel, author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and entrepreneur, Danny Kelly. Entrepreneur, nothing. No, seriously, no, he is. He's got his car thing, isn't he? You've got that going on.
Yeah. He is an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
You can't complain about that.
A medium-sized businessman. I'm talking about your business.
Not you.
Not you.
Christine's getting in on it as well. Boom, boom.
You two ganging up on me. And I thought I was the rose amongst thorns. No. You two are ganging up.
We love you, Danny.
I love you too.
So listen, we have been talking about this whole business. Do you think that ultimately that Kwasi Kwarteng was a sacrificial lamb since she got rid of 100% save her own skin?
Yeah.
Very much so. We've been talking about geese that lay the golden eggs. We've been talking about lambs that are sacrificed at the altar for their blood. Of course he was the sacrificial lamb. And I found his very dignified letter to Prime Minister Truss. I found that surprising, and it was very humble of him, because he's actually taking all of this. He's not criticising the decision. I felt at times there was a little brown-nosing, which is another saying, and I felt that he could have almost... He's thinking of the party.
Yeah, he is.
He's thinking of the party.
Yeah.
He could have launched a salvo at Prime Minister Truss and said, this mini-budget was all of our decisions. We had plenty of hours talking about it.
No, but in the letter he does say your vision.
He makes it
and
quite
your vision,
clear.
he says it twice. Yes. So he's making it clear that it was her vision as well.
A joint decision, yes.
He's very
absolutely.
dignified.
I quite agree, and that goes a long way in politics.
Very much so.
I hope I'm right in thinking that he won't be too disruptive on the backbenches. I think he will continue to support her as much as he can. He's taken the pill, he's taken the hit. I bumped into Alistair Stewart on the way in, and he told me what he has said several times, which I think is a brilliant way of summing up Liz Truss's situation, which is that she's playing Russian roulette, but there's a bullet in every
chamber.
Chamber, that's the word, a bullet in every chamber. And that is what it seems to be at the moment.
Well, I think the Conservative Party...
The other thing I find extraordinary about our new Chancellor, Mr Hunt, is that he was campaigning for a 15% corporation tax, reduction to 15%, and he's now apparently completely rolled over, and he's going to go for the 25%, which I would have thought was a disaster.
Well, they're all rolling over, aren't they, literally? I mean...
But it's she was elected on a growth ticket. The only reason she got elected was because she was pro-growth, cutting taxes, etc. If she now rows back on all of that, she has been elected fraudulently by the members.
Well, not really. I just think that what has happened is that the MPs have not got what they wanted. They wanted Rishi, the majority of them appear to want Rishi. They didn't like the fact that their members, the party members who pay the money into the party to enable them to be a party...
And who elect them.
Wanted Boris, were not happy with what they did, so they went for Liz Truss because she represented more of what Boris represented in terms of loyalty, which is, I think, one of the main things that we all liked about Liz Truss. And now look at what she's done now, but it's not her fault, frankly. She had to do it. But I just think that they've lost their way, and it's the MPs. It's the MPs. It's not even the party members. They're losing members.
No,
they're losing credibility.
Well, they're all terrified of losing their livelihood, their income, their seats, etc. I mean, if the figures won't stay as they are, but if they do stay as they are, there's only going to be a minuscule handful of them left. The ones with us. It's not funny because you're not even facing this nightmare of a Starmer leading a coalition. You're facing the nightmare of Starmer leading his own government.
I don't want to laugh. I don't want to laugh. I want to cry, really.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I think Starmer is heading in a direction which is going to appease a lot of centrists, I really do. He's expelled the half-left loonies, hard-left loonies, forgive me.
Yes.
And Tony Blair had 3 successful elections because he wasn't a hard-left loony, he was a centrist.
Well, just as well, you're not hard-left loony.
I still don't want him in power.
Right, this is GB News. If you just joined me, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio still to come. The Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for a general election? After a whirlwind day in British politics, which is pretty much like every day, we'll be discussing all of that. But first, we'll be back after this.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel, and it's just coming up to 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. Now, in our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to let the voters decide in a general election? Now, this comes after what can only be described as another crazy day in British politics, and not the same sort of Meghan Markle crazy, not that sort of crazy, because she says that in her thing, in her podcast. But it could be another crazy day because loads of things are happening. After cutting short his trip to the IMF in the United States, Kwasi Kwarteng returned to the UK this morning to find himself sacked by the Prime Minister. That means that his time as Chancellor lasted just 38 days. I think it's not the shortest,
no,
but it is the quickest one to be sacked.
Second short. I think Diane Abbott was the shortest,
No,
but she was just a
I
caretaker.
have the answer to that.
No, but
Ian McLeod, after 30 days, died.
He died, but but he died. I'm not talking about being sacked. That's totally different.
Oh, I see.
Diane Abbott, I think.
You had the answer to nothing, Danny. Now, the Prime Minister then appointed former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt as her new Chancellor, and in a press conference at 2:30 today announced a major U-turn on one of her flagship Tory leadership election promises. That was the one where she was going to keep corporation tax at 19%. Oh, OK. Then there's a package, there's no package at all. Right, this comes as Tory infighting has significantly worsened, as it has been reported that senior Tory MPs are plotting to oust Liz Truss. And in a bid to push Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt into number 10 to replace Truss and Kwarteng. So in my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to let the voters decide in the general election? I'm joined now by the former Sun editor, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, welcome to GB News. Oh, so Kelvin. Right, so what do you think then? I don't know where to start with all of this because there's so much that's been going on. What do you make of the whole thing? Kwasi Kwarteng, first of all, being sacked. What, in your view, do you feel that was the right move?
Well, I think we can move on from that because I think the disaster, her press conference was a disaster. There was no sense of how sorry I am that this has all happened. No sense of I am to blame for somebody's mortgages going up or somebody's pensions being in peril, which is not true. But also, there was no sense of this is what we're going to do, because what it sounded as though she was going to do was going through a period of austerity, which actually I'm 100% in favour of. But she actually never said any of this when she won the mandate from what turned out to be pretty dim people in the Conservative Party members. And the other thing that has happened to me, and it happened to me just the other day, is that the leader of Surrey County Council told me over a rather enjoyable coffee that a number of Tory MPs in Surrey, which has been the bedrock of Conservatism for a billion years, right, that Jeremy Hunt stood a serious chance of losing his seat in Farnham. So even if Jeremy survives, I have a massive question mark about whether, come the election, whether he'll be in office anyway. One of the things that is not ever written about is that, and remember, some of your guests there are almost as old as me, will remember when Scotland was run by the Labour Party. They were all Labour MPs. In the south, it has been a Tory stronghold, and Surrey in particular has been bringing back MPs who are Conservatives for 1,000 years. Supposing that turned out not to be the case, this could be far worse than 97. So the idea of going to the country right now is out of the question. Now, it may be that we have to dump Liz Truss. I am very, very, very hostile to Liz Truss. I forecast 3 or 4 weeks ago, so you can check it on my Twitter feed, that she would be a disaster for the Conservatives and a disaster for the country. And it has already turned out to be the case, and we're only, 20 odd days into it. So we can't go to the country yet. What we do need to do is to say that Kwasi can't have been the only person that manufactured these things which destabilise the country. If that is the case, then we have to throw out the whole team. And if you run a company, the finance director can be slung out. But honestly, the truth about the matter is the CEO has to go as well.
Well, Kelvin, stay right there, because I'm now joined by former Minister for Europe under Labour, Dennis McShane. Dennis, I'm going to ask you, have you seen anything as this chaotic in your political life?
No, I first stood for Parliament in 1974. I'm not sure if I'm a bit younger or the same age as Kelvin, was active even before then. I've never, ever, ever seen anything like this at all. And I'm not in favour of rushing into general elections. Doesn't do Labour that good, didn't do them any good in 2017 or even 2019, but Corbyn's gone now, so that's a gift that stopped giving. There's a perfectly eligible alternative Prime Minister in Keir Starmer there. And to confirm a bit what Kelvin just said, I happen to be at a conference, of course, in Europe, you know me, and one of the people there is a very old friend, Graham Brady. His children, my children, went to the same school near Westminster 20 years ago. Now, Graham's a Northern MP. But he said, I've only got a majority of 6,000. He wasn't saying he was going to lose. He won in 97. But I think those seats are now in real danger. So, but replacing Liz Truss with whom? Because this is a party that's exposed itself as, in recent years as just not being very, very fit for government. We disguised it by offering Jeremy Corbyn as an alternative twice, which was our disaster, our arrogance, our folly. Now we've got a perfectly competent alternative government. But I think the people will say, we're just not going to stay with these clowns.
So Dennis, would you say...
You've got it right.
So Dennis, would you say we should have a general election then? Do you think it's time for the people to have that general election?
Frankly, yes. I know Jeremy Hunt. He lives just down the road from me. He's a nice guy. He's very pro-European. I approve of that.
But what about for the country? I get all that. But what about for the country?
Okay. No, for the country, I think the country needs a big change of direction. It needs a new team. The problems are huge. It's not that Labour's got any magic solutions. It's going to be a nightmare mess to clean up. We're the laughing stock of the world.
Well, let's bring Kelvin in. Because let's bring Kelvin in, because he doesn't think we should have a general election right now. And it could potentially be worse. I mean, if we have another general election, we'll probably end up being the proper laughing stock of the world. Kelvin, what do you think?
Well, the reason I don't want a general election is that whatever the nightmare is of conservatism will be replaced by a double nightmare of socialism, handing out even more money to the dim and the skint beyond everything that we've already paid out. The truth about the country is, I totally buy what Dennis says. In the event of this is transferred to whether it's the Lib Dems, the Greens, the SNP, doesn't matter who it is, we are in a nightmare economic situation. caused, A, by COVID, 400 billion going out the door, and now having to subsidise everybody's gas bill, whether they can afford to pay or not. And with socialism in charge, I cannot envisage what my tax rate would look like. I don't want to pay £1.04 in the pound. I don't. So I'm going to hang on. I don't care if we have to fire a prime minister every 5 seconds. From now until 2024, we don't want socialism at any price.
Dennis, you heard that. What do you say?
Kelvin, I adore you, but if you think Keir Starmer is a socialist, then I'm a member of the North Korean Politburo. This is a Tony Blair-type centrist, can-do government. I mean, I know what socialism is. I was
Yeah, but he doesn't know what a woman is. He doesn't know what a woman is.
And if I could find a socialist anywhere on the Labour front bench, I'd send you a nice picture of it. This will be a moderate, centrist, sort of Chancellor Schultz type government, Tony Blair type government, Kevin Attlee type government. Trust me, Kelvin, I know you want a socialist government because you're a revolutionary. You want to live in exciting times. You're not going to get it from Starmer and the Labour Party of today.
Well, listen, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but thank you so much. Dennis McShane is the former Labour Minister, and also Kelvin Mackenzie. Thank you very much for joining me as well. Right, so what do you think? If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget you can download the GB News app, find out all the shows and watch them at your leisure. Now, after the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate. And this hour, I'm asking, after yet another day of political turmoil, is it time to let the voters decide in the general election? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and entrepreneur Danny Kelly. Don't forget, stay with me, because at 5 in Friday Focus, how safe is your pension? The Governor of the Bank of England told pension funds that they have until today to balance their books. But what does that mean for the ordinary person? Stay tuned, we'll be discussing that. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 4:33, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says she isn't resigning after announcing yet another mini-budget U-turn. This time, Liz Truss is reversing the government's policy to scrap a planned rise in corporation tax. Her press conference came shortly after sacking Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor and replacing him with former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Ms Truss says she's still committed to her plans for growth and insists that she'll, quote, always act in the national interest.
I have acted decisively today because my priority is ensuring our country's economic stability. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest. This is always my first consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm, and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity of our country for generations to come.
Royal Mail says it's planning to make up to 6,000 people redundant by next August after announcing losses of more than £200 million. The company says it's started notifying workers of its plan, which aims to reduce its overall headcount by a total of 10,000. Royal Mail expects its full-year losses to hit £350 million. Detectives say the prime suspect in the murder of 19-year-old Leah Croucher, who went missing 3 years ago in Milton Keynes, killed himself in April 2019. Leah was last seen in CCTV footage in February of 2019. The suspect, Neil Maxwell, had previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls. Thames Valley Police launched a murder inquiry after finding human remains and personal items belonging to Leah in a house Maxwell was said to have been working at. Climate activists have been arrested after throwing tomato soup at a Vincent van Gogh painting in London's National Gallery. Just Stop Oil staged the protest against fossil fuels by hurling the opened tins over Van Gogh's sunflowers and then gluing themselves to the wall. Police say the painting was undamaged as it's behind glass. Thousands of people across Australia's southeast have been told to leave their homes after 2 days of heavy rain caused flash flooding. Large parts of Victoria, southern New South Wales and parts of Tasmania saw more than a month's worth of rainfall over the last 48 hours. The heavy rain is expected to ease, but officials are warning that flooding could continue throughout the weekend. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, earlier I was talking about, the whole way the Conservative Party is behaving at the moment, and I did a monologue on it. And Steve has been in touch, and he says, we've just had all the pomp and ceremony of the Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, where the world was in awe of our traditions and ceremonies. Less than a month later, the world is now laughing at us, wondering just what the hell a country with so much to offer the world has given the world, has taught the world, can't even get it together themselves. Yeah, well, you know what's going on. We're watching it and we're thinking, why? But let's return to our Great British debate because of all of this. And I'm asking you, is it time to let us, the voters, decide in a general election? Now, this follows a chaotic day in British politics as the Prime Minister has sacked Kwasi Kwarteng after only 38 days as Chancellor, and she's replaced him with the former Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt. Remember him? A move suspected to be an appeal to the left of the Conservative Party. And the Prime Minister held a press conference where she announced that previous government's policy of increasing corporation tax from 19% to 25% in the spring will actually remain, so it's a U-turn. Mind you, they've done so many U-turns, this entire Conservative Party, not just her and not just in her reign. Rishi did a load of them as well. During the pandemic, they kept doing them as well. And this, of course, has embarrassed the Prime Minister, so she's looking a bit jellified. So I'm asking my panel today, is it time to let voters decide in a general election? I'm asking you, is it time to decide? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and broadcaster Danny Kelly. I love just varying it a bit, don't let him get too big for his boots. Christine, I'm going to start with you. You've got the huge sort of knowledge in politics.
No, well, it was just your mention just now about U-turns. I mean, the fantastic days of Margaret Thatcher, you turn if you want to, the ladies not for turning. You had a Prime Minister then who stood her ground and no way would she have done all this. I worry hugely about lots of things, but the MPs are their own worst enemies and they're our own worst enemies because they're causing all this. Yeah. I don't, I'm afraid, have confidence in the Chief Whip, Wendy Morton, I think it is. She's the first female Chief Whip that the Tories have had, so I very much wanted her to succeed. I actually think she's probably too nice. And to be Chief Whip successfully, especially with the incredibly unruly bunch that we've got at the moment, they're always unruly, but take the biscuit now. She needs to be more ruthless, and I just worry that she hasn't got it in her. It may be that there's a sort of tidal wave coming at her and she can't do anything about it. And I'm afraid I don't have confidence in Liz Truss's Deputy Prime Minister, Therese Coffey.
No, none at all. She's the Health Secretary as well.
That duo does not...
That would be like me being a health secretary.
I wasn't even commenting. That is not what I was talking about.
I could see the glint in Nana's eye as she stared at my stomach.
But what you were saying about the whip, and she's sort of a bit... She is quite weak, isn't she? She's a bit like the police.
I think she is. She hasn't got the toughness and the ruthlessness.
She's a bit like the police officers who asked those Just Stop Oil protesters if they'd like a cup of tea. You know, I think... I don't know, insulate Britain or whatever.
Yeah. But the question is it time for a general election?
Yeah, sorry, yes, it is.
And
no.
I think there's no way they're going to give him a general election because the Tories know that they're going to lose.
You would have thought that they wouldn't have got rid of Kwasi Kwarteng because they realised they'd lose, or they wouldn't get rid of Boris Johnson because they'd realised they were going to lose, or they wouldn't try and do everything they're doing is making them lose. It's like they want to lose.
Yeah, but there was social leverage on them to reject Boris Johnson because of Partygate. So there was so much...
Not really.
Well, I believe
I think they could have got around it. I think
societal leverage on them to say...
Danny's right.
The question was binary. Do you want someone like him who can't abide by his own laws leading the country? The answer's yes or no.
And
so they were forced into a corner. Well, that's my view.
I agree with Danny.
Well, I don't agree with you because I think that they could have rallied behind him, but they weren't prepared.
But then they would be accused of supporting someone.
No, they had this contingent in their party who didn't like Brexit. They had a contingent in their party who just wanted to get rid of Boris and who hated him. You've talked about those people that hate Boris with a vengeance, no matter what. And so I think that contingent, and then of course you have the established media who literally would not let go of Partygate, although they were quite happy to let Beergate slide quite easily, and then call Keir Starmer some sort of, as though he's some sort of honest person, which I'm sure he is, but on the case of Beergate, there were many untruths, it's quite clear.
So just to go back to the question, I would say from a Conservative perspective, no, it's not. From any other perspective, yes, it is. And I have sympathy for both views. I was talking to Danielle, my wife, about this, and I said, you know what, I think it's time for an election. And she said, hang on, you haven't given Liz Truss a chance.
Exactly, they didn't.
And she's changed my mind.
Well, they didn't give Boris a chance, did they?
It's not you not giving Liz Truss a chance. It's her own truth. It's her own MPs who are not giving her a chance. They created the situation whereby they ended up with Liz Truss as their leader, and that they are the ones who've got to give her a chance.
And they will lose the next election if it was held today or whenever.
Well, there is a theory, of course, that have a general election, Labour will inherit this god-awful mess that we're in.
And then the Tories
can come back next time round, but that's quite a risk.
No, and
that's
also...
a defeatist attitude.
No, and it's not
It's not my view.
It's not honest. I think the most irritating thing about most of this is that it's all been so undemocratic. First of all, Boris was elected with a huge 80-seat majority, OK? So that is what the people wanted. Then the MPs decided, through all Partygate and all the things, that people didn't want him. But obviously that's not down to them because the people voted for him. So then they did a vote of no confidence. He won the vote of no confidence, which would then say that it's OK, he should carry on, he's got the confidence of his MPs. They hated him so much, they were then prepared to change the rules so that they could then get rid of him so he couldn't stay for an entire year, and they would not get off his back. Now they've got what they wanted in terms of they got rid of him, but then they didn't get the person they wanted, which was they wanted Rishi. So then they went about getting rid of... now they're going about getting rid of Liz Truss, and they started with Kwasi.
The trouble with what you've just said is that Boris displayed, I'm not sure that arrogance is quite the right word, but sort of arrogance, and he didn't think he had to take people along with him. He didn't think he had to obey the rules, etc., etc. And to me, Liz Truss is now displaying the same sort of arrogance. She and her ex-Chancellor didn't think it was necessary to take people along to explain. I mean, it was over a week after their fiscal event before either of them came out and started to explain to people. And most people haven't got a clue about monetary policy, etc. They just needed it to have it explained to them.
I think they would have found any excuse.
Christine, I disagree for once with you because I don't think it was Boris Johnson's arrogance that he would have a quote-unquote party and have a slice of his birthday cake. He was just one of probably 80 people in a building. He was walking down corridors. I don't think that's arrogance. I think it's just human behaviour.
No, I don't just mean thinking that he could get away with the Partygate, but all all sorts of things. He generally thought that he could quote Latin at people and everything would be fancy.
That's his personality.
I know it's his personality, but
that's not. Do you think that's arrogant?
I just think he thought he could get away with it, and I think he should have been a little more contrite and democratic.
But we've got one who's contrite now. So you see, the thing is, we've got one who's contrite, but it seems that people are picking out characteristics of the person, so personal characteristics, instead of looking at some of the qualities. So for me, if I look at Boris, I think leader. He go into a room, he commands the eye. As soon as he's in, he's got charisma. He says something, eventually he can persuade people to go along with his vision. Leadership. Even if you don't like his vision, you probably liked him. And even when he's gone, people are saying, yeah, he was all right, he's a great guy, bring him out to my house for a party, but I wouldn't want him running the country. Well, we have what we have now. And all the people I'm looking at, none of them are better than him. So it's like, none of them are better than him. So if he was so bad, they're all worse.
This is the result of...
They're all worse.
Yes, but what I liked about Liz Truss, and which is why if I'd had a vote, I didn't like a lot about it, but if I'd had a vote, I would have voted for her, was her tax plans. And now that she's abandoned all those, what is the point of Liz Truss?
Well, that's a good question.
I'm almost with you. Bring back Boris.
I would like Boris back, to be honest with you. After I've seen this, none of them are better. Right, but this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice, your opportunity to tell us about what you think about the topics that we're really discussing. Right, where should we go to? Beverly.
Yorkshire.
Yeah, let's go to Beverly. Let's have a chat to Dan Bryan. He's there in Beverly. Dan, hello.
Hello.
He's left boring old Hull. I'm joking, because it rhymes with dull. I'm joking. Hull is lovely. Anyway, so Dan, what do you think? Is it time? Is it time we decide?
Well, decide between what? We've got clowns to the left of me. We've got jokers to the right. I mean, seriously, this lot are as incompetent as anything I've ever seen. And the MPs seem to get slowly worse as we go along. No, none of them have had real jobs anymore. And they just, when something exposes them for what they are, they try their best to obfuscate their way through it. And try and make sure that they're making the right sound bites to make it sound like they're in control. But in actual fact, the macroeconomic, disaster that's about to unfold in the world, no one government can control any of it. They just have to help ride the storm as best as possible. And I don't think any of them, left or right, have got any competence whatsoever. And as far as I'm concerned, Parliament has lost my confidence. So, yeah, we could have a general election, but choose between who?
Well, here, Dan. Thank you so much for that. Well, that's the way it goes, Dan Bryan. He's our great British voice this hour. Thank you so much to Dan. He's there in Beverly. So today I've been asking you, is it time to let voters decide in a general election? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. John says, if we had a general election now, Labour would probably win. And I believe that they have absolutely no real answers. I believe they would probably double down on taxes as they think that that is the answer to everything. Dean says, I just want someone who knows what they're doing to run things. I don't want to laugh, because it's not actually that
It's not too much to ask, is it?
Trying. Ben says, nope, the Tories should stay in power. All those who voted for this government must keep suffering until their time is officially up. I'm sort of slightly inclined to agree with that we need to just get, they need to finish what they've supposedly started, although could that be the end of us all? Right, well, there's a poll up on Twitter right now and throughout the show, and I'm asking, is it time to let the voters decide in a general election? And currently, 61% of you say yes, and 39% of you say no. If you've just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for Inside Russia, where I get the view from those living under Putin. I'll be speaking to an anti-war protester. He believes that the Russian president won't press the red button, despite moving nuclear bombers to the Finnish border. All of that after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is GB News Live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. And now it's time to head over to Russia. It is time for Inside Russia, where we get all the latest goings-on from those living under Vladimir Putin. Now, the war rages on in Ukraine. According to reports, the Russian president has moved numerous nuclear bombers to an airbase near the Finnish and Norwegian borders, with various world leaders actively mentioning the threat of nuclear war. The fear of mutually assured destruction, or MAD as people call it, which I think you would be to press that button, has loomed in the back of people's minds since this all began in February. Ivan Fedorov, whose name we have changed for safety reasons, is a Russian engineer who has stood against conscription and attended numerous anti-war protests in Russia. And Ivan joins me live now. Ivan, talk to me then. Tell me a little bit about your situation.
My situation, I think it haven't changed since the beginning of war. I just live my everyday life as it's always been, but there is a sense of desperation, there is a sense of uncertainty around the air. Everybody around me is somehow scared. Maybe people in Russia try to ignore what is happening, what is going to be. They try to not see. But it's a scare. Everybody is scared here. I think even the patriots, even the Putin supporters, they see that war is not going according to Putin's plan. It's going bad. Ukraine is winning right now. So it's uncertainty. My own situation, I just continue living my everyday life and participating in protests. And my, I say guiding emotion is desperation right now. I don't know what I have to do, what I'm gonna do to stop this madness that Putin has started in February.
How do you feel then about the Russian government?
I don't know how to put the right word. They are insane. Insanity is maybe the best. They just try to destroy not the Ukraine, not the world order as it is, but they're destroying Russia itself. Why they are doing this, I don't know. Maybe they so deep in hypocrisy between themselves, they cannot see what is really going in Russia. They cannot see consequences of their actions. They just keep lying to themselves, and it's some kind of insanity, really.
Now, are you afraid that Putin will use nuclear weapons? Because a lot of us here are thinking that he is serious about his threat.
I don't think so. Even tactical nuclear strike will provoke Northern Alliance to step into the war. And Northern Alliance, they got a lot more firepower And I think Putin understands it, and his surroundings understand that going to happen if he launches first nuke. The Russia will be evaporated, obliterated in matter of weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is possible. It's about 5% per. I think that is gonna happen.
But he's calling on people to come and join his army. I mean, what would you do if you were conscripted?
The first thing that I'm gonna say that I don't think that I'm going to be conscripted because I never served in army of Russia. That's my story. But if I going to go to Ukraine and pick a gun, I think that I will join the Legion of Russian Freedom. You know, that's is military legion that joined forces with Ukrainian army to fight Putin.
Well, listen,
that's my determination.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you coming to talk to us, and we realise it's a difficult situation, and that you are live there. So we do appreciate your contribution. Take care, and thank you very much. Well, he was live in Russia talking to us about the situation on the ground. I'm also joined now by political commentator Danny Armstrong. Danny, well, you heard what he's saying. He's, it's not a good situation at all.
No, not at all. I mean, his story is sadly one that's all too common amongst Russians, certainly among young Russians who have access to independent news sources, who have access to social media, who have unrestricted access to the internet. Unrestricted access, I mean, via VPN. Of course, independent media has been somewhat suffocated in Russia. But it was an interesting point that Ivan raised, that the faith in Putin, even among his supporters, is somewhat slipping, and that is true. We saw the Levada polls shortly after the war began in March, saying that Putin's popularity had risen to 83% among his people. There were some rumours that that people weren't really giving their full opinion. They were a little bit scared to say what they really thought. But those same polls not long ago showed that more than 60% of people in Russia are actually feeling fear and anxiety, and it's exactly what I feel when I speak to these people. Ivan is an outgoing, smart person. I've spoken to him a couple of times, and you could see the fear in his voice and his face when he spoke. So well, yeah, he's there for all to see.
He did make that point, didn't he? That even those who seem to be the patriots are sort of going off the idea as well. What about the whole movement towards the borders with these launchers or whatever they are? Yeah, well,
this is the news that Russia has moved 11 bombers to within 20 miles of the Norwegian border. Of course, Norway, as we know, is a member of NATO. I mean, it's not going to allay any fears for anyone who is anticipating nuclear war, given the news, given what is happening in Ukraine, and given what some of Putin's words in the last few weeks. These are really heavy duty warplanes. There's 7 Tu-160 jets. That's some of the largest warplanes around, and 4 Tu-95 strategic bombers. Now, they are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. It does sound really dangerous. It sounds like, very, very James Bond sort of stuff, very Armageddon kind of stuff. But we must stress, if we dig into it a little bit more, that these are annual exercises. Annual exercises are fine. This may seem like a Putin flex, but I was stood outside.
They do this all the time.
Yeah, I was stood on Red Square when the annual exercises of troops near the border with Ukraine were going on, just before Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor's meeting with Vladimir Putin. Russia pulled them away. It threw me, and that was the kind of the point for the rest of the world. So you can never know whether it's a flex or whether it means something deeper.
Well, Danny, thank you very much for that as well. We'll obviously stay close to that. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. So it's just gone 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. On the way, Friday Focus, and I'll be looking at the Bank of England giving pension funds 3 days to balance their books and how might it affect you and your pension. Then on the Great British Debate, I'll be asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? All of that on the way after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. Almost exactly 1 minute past 5. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says she isn't resigning after announcing yet another mini-budget U-turn. This time, Liz Truss is reversing the government's policy to scrap a planned rise in corporation tax. Her press conference came shortly after sacking Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor and replacing him with former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Ms Truss says she's still committed to her plans for growth.
I have acted decisively today because my priority is ensuring our country's economic stability. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest. This is always my first consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity of our country for generations to come.
Detectives say the prime suspect in the murder of 19-year-old Leah Croucher, who went missing 3 years ago in Milton Keynes, killed himself in April 2019. Leah was last seen in CCTV footage in February of that same year. Thames Valley Police launched a murder inquiry after finding human remains and Leah's personal items in a house that Neil Maxwell was said to have been working at. Maxwell had previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls. Head of Crime Ian Hunter says Maxwell was a suspect in another crime at the time he killed himself.
Maxwell has previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls and was wanted in connection with a sexual assault in Newport Pagnell in November 2018. He is highly likely to have known that he would be returning to prison if he was arrested and convicted.
2 climate activists have been arrested after throwing tomato soup at a Vincent van Gogh painting in London's National Gallery. Just Stop Oil staged the protest against fossil fuels by hurling the opened tins over Van Gogh's sunflowers and then glued themselves to the wall. The painting was undamaged as it's behind glass. The Met Police says both were arrested for criminal damage and aggravated trespass. In international news, the President of Ukraine is accusing the International Committee of the Red Cross of inaction in upholding the rights of Ukrainian prisoners of war. The criticism follows the death of more than 50 Ukrainian POWs in July due to an explosion at the Olenivka camp in Donetsk. Both sides have blamed each other for the blast. The Red Cross has previously tried and failed to obtain access to that camp. However, President Zelensky says they must try again.
There is Evlenica, in fact, a concentration camp where our prisoners of war are kept. Access to them must be provided, as it was agreed. The Red Cross can make it happen, but you have to try to make it happen. Ukraine is ready to facilitate this. The mission of the Red Cross can work based on the example of the IAEA mission, but it requires leadership. Conscientiousness is required.
In the United States, 5 people, including an off-duty police officer, have been shot dead in North Carolina. The shooting happened in Raleigh, near a popular trail that runs through part of the city. At least 2 other people, including a second police officer, were wounded. Police say the suspect is a 15-year-old boy who is now in a critical condition. The city's mayor, Mary Ann Baldwin, says gun laws must be changed. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana Akua.
It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Now, each Friday at 5, we put the spotlight on a particular guest or subject matter in my Friday Focus. And today I'm asking, just how safe is your pension? The Governor of the Bank of England told pension funds that this Friday was the deadline for the balancing of their books before the emergency support for the bond market is removed. But what does this mean for the ordinary person? What does this mean for you and me? Especially given that this whirlwind of a day that we're having in British politics. And for our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? Now, Labour's plan to decarbonise power by 2030, we'll find out what exactly that means, has raised concerns about the party's intentions and priorities among their critics. Not to mention their pledge to ban fracking entirely, despite the growing energy crisis. So have Labour got it all wrong? Is it even possible to achieve by 2030? Because that gives them, what, 5 years, if that? That's if we don't have a general election right now. Get your thoughts in. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So it's now time for Friday Focus. And today I'm going to be discussing what's going on with your pensions. Now, all of this comes as the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, told pension funds that they have until today to balance their books before emergency support for the bond markets is removed. Now, that's following the aftershock by a lot of people say it's caused by the mini-budget, but of course we know that actually interest rates and a few other things did need to happen. But the Bank of England injected up to £65 billion of long-dated government bonds to help calm the market. Not something that they don't do, actually. That's something that they do, but I don't know to that extent. We'll find out more. But consequently, the cost of long-term borrowing for the government rose to its highest level since the bank's bailout. Now, those aged 55 and over who continue to work and have defined contribution workplace and pension personal pensions could have already seen drastic decreases to the value of their pension pot. So for this Friday Focus, I'm asking, what on earth is going to happen to your pensions? I'm joined now, firstly, by the CEO of Competere and International Trade Advisor, Shankar Singham. All right, Shankar, so first of all, just sort of explain to me about this whole thing, because this borrowing of money, this 65 billion, people are thinking, oh my God, what is the correlation between that and the pensions, and should we be worried in any way, shape or form?
Right. So what's been happening is that the bank has been, as you said, supporting the bond market, has been supporting, buying of these assets, and there are certain asset classes that have been problematic. Now, you have to understand the reason that we're in this situation. And you mentioned at the top of your piece the interest rates. We know that interest rates will have to rise in order to combat inflation. Now, what's been happening in the last 20 years, really, is we've had very, very low interest rates. And because we've had very low interest rates and money has been easy, a lot of actors in financial markets have been engaging in activities that they perhaps would not have engaged in if the borrowing cost had been higher than it currently, than it historically has been in the last 20 years. This has led to a lot of risk. There is a particular mortgage market, for example, a product in the mortgage market called LDIs that have gone from £40 billion 10 years ago to about £1.6 trillion. So you've got a lot of, whenever money is easy, you get a lot of what's called moral hazard. So you get a lot of activity that should not be taking place, but that is taking place. And this has caused significant problems in this market, which is why the Bank of England has intervened. But what the challenge for the bank and for the new Chancellor and for everybody is, how do you stabilise this market, and how do you at the same time deal with the issue of inflation, which, regardless of what your pension is going to be, if inflation is rising, at a particularly high rate, it's going to lower the value of anything that you do have. So tackling inflation is a real priority, and that's why interest rates in the world, and the inflation is a global problem. It's going up everywhere, and it's going up everywhere as a result of things like the lockdown and shutting down the global economy and various other things. So in the US, the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates, and interest rates will be increasing in other places as well, in order to put downward pressure on inflation, so you can keep everybody's savings actually worth something.
Right, I see. So the 3 days, is that enough for pension funds to sort of balance their books then? Because they've been given 3 days to sort that out.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is a lot of these issues are very closely interconnected. And so markets generally, the bond market is essentially an investment in government debt. It's an investment investors essentially saying, look, we trust the ability of the UK government to make good on this debt. In other words, we're making a bet on essentially the quality of the UK economy and its governance structure and so on. So the problem with bailing out the pension firms for too long is that starts to negatively impact the market's view of the UK economy itself. And that won't help anybody. So they have to be limited in the time that they do this, but they have to, at the same time, you can't make policy, on the basis of minute-to-minute market reactions. You have to make policy on the basis of what is going to actually improve the UK economy
in the long run.
And the markets will react in the way that they react. The difficulty here is that we've got a lot of built-up problems and built-up distortions in the market as a result of extremely artificially low interest rates for a very long time.
All right, Shanka, stay there because I'm going to have a chat now with the head of Pensions and Savings Interactive investor, Rebecca O'Connor. Rebecca, so your view then, the pensions, I mean, a lot of people are concerned that they may well lose their pension. Is that, could that actually happen?
In a word, no, not as a result of what we've just seen in the Bank of England intervention. And it's to do with this LDI funding, as you were just describing, and really it was a way for pension funds to manage their liabilities. That as a result of the intervention in the mini budget, it suddenly shifted gilt prices and gilt yields, and that meant that the pension funds had to suddenly pay cash to the LDI funds that back them. And it was their difficulty in generating that cash really quickly that caused the problem. Now, pension funds have had a while now to sort this problem out. They have been re-engineering their assets, and they are now in a better position to generate any further cash required by these LDI funds. Now, I'm not saying the problem's gone away completely, but the other thing you need to bear in mind is they are well funded. It's just they couldn't access the cash quickly enough. So in terms of whether or not people need to worry, those people with the type of pension, the private sector defined benefit pensions affected, no, they don't. And as a last resort, sponsoring employers, the employers that are actually behind the pension schemes can step in and generate more cash and fund the pension schemes so that they can help out too. But that is a last resort, and that's not on the cards. So I think we can say that the pension schemes have had a good amount of time, and the only thing that might throw them off slightly is clearly if we see changes again in gilt prices and gilt yields that are very sudden and they can't generate that cash quickly enough, even after having done what they've done in the last few weeks to settle everything and get in a better position to handle further volatility. In terms of defined contribution pensions, that's this pot of money schemes that most people now have. They have suffered big falls this year. They were suffering big falls anyway as a result of rising interest rates and higher inflation eroding some of the value of the pension. So they also invest in bonds and gilts and are affected by what's happening in the markets. And they have seen further falls in the last couple of weeks as a result of the mini budget and subsequent volatility. Now, this is worrying, of course it is. And of course, when somebody says, don't panic, don't worry, then the tendency is to panic and worry. But actually, the worst thing to do is to crystallise losses. So if your portfolio has...
So hold on a sec. So basically, part of this was caused by the mini budget, because that's what people want to get a handle on, because all this LDI, I mean, I'm not sure what that stands for, but I'm sure you'll explain. But what people really who are watching and listening want to hear is that their pension is safe, and that the long-term future of the pension is safe, and those taking their money want to know whether it will affect the amount that they take during all of this. So can you answer that? Yeah. So you said their pensions are safe, yeah?
Pensions are safe.
Yeah. So in terms of whether people short-term, will they get less from their pension as they're drawing it now? Yes.
Yeah. Now that's the risk at the moment. Now it's for people who are approaching retirement or about to access their pensions or already accessing their pensions. If they're drawing on them and they've fallen in value, then the risk is that they're not going to last as long for them, and they might not last the whole retirement. Now, there are obviously things that people can do. They can speak to PensionWise, which is the government free independent guidance service. They can speak to a financial advisor if they're worried. But really, in the short term, if you are relying on your pension or you're about to start accessing it, then maybe consider taking a little less than you had originally planned. Certainly don't panic and don't cash in the whole lot, because that crystallises any losses that have occurred, and that then removes your chance of seeing your pension pot grow again. Because of course, yes, things have fallen a bit this year, but there is it's an investment. The whole point is that over the long term it grows, and if you cash in, then you lose that possibility of further growth.
Cash in now, hold on to your pension, keep it where it is, and wait for the value to rise, and then hopefully all this scare this talk won't even affect most people drawing their pension, because it's a long-term thing. But it's those who are currently drawing their pension. So so very briefly, because I've got to move on to somebody else, do you feel that, just a yes or no, do you think that a lot of this is a bit scaremongery?
I don't think it's scaremongery. I think there have been issues, but I think that people understandably feel worried. But the difficulty is conveying actually that it's not affecting pension scheme members. It's
yes
affecting
no?
the pension
so Rebecca,
and the
yes
consultants who are having to sort it out, but not you as the pension scheme members.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. Lovely to talk to you. Right, let's have a quick chat with who we got next. Tom McPhail. He's the pensions expert at the financial consultancy at Lang Cat. So hang on. So to talk to me then. So your view on all of this, then let's get your perspective. It's always good to get other people's perspectives on this. So do you feel that it was the budget's fault, this whole crisis that we see ourselves in, or would this is this normal shenanigans for the market anyway?
I agree with a lot of what Rebecca O'Connor had to say. I think the budget exacerbated trends that were already in train. So things were at an interesting point as the Bank of England moved away from quantitative easing. So things were always going to be a little bit awkward, and as already been observed, we'd seen interest rates going up around the world. So we were in a period of change. I think the problem was that we had a very radical budget dropped unexpectedly into the middle of that, and that undermined confidence, the market's confidence in the government and the fiscal position of the United Kingdom. So yeah, to that extent, it was the government's fault. It catalysed what was already in train. I pick up on a couple of things there. So the volatility that we saw was unusual, but it does happen from time to time, and mostly pension schemes can deal with it. Because interest rates rose so rapidly and so unexpectedly, they were struggling for a while to deal with it. And that's why the Bank of England had to step in. And as Rebecca has commented, employers were standing behind those pension schemes. Mostly they've been dealing with it okay. Even behind them, there's also the Pension Protection Fund. So there's a lifeboat scheme that sits behind that as well. So if a pension scheme does go bust, and it does happen from time to time, if an employer goes bust and there's not enough money in the pension scheme, there's always the lifeboat scheme to back it up. I'd also agree with what Rebecca had to say about... Sorry, did you want to come back on me on that one?
No, you also agree with what Rebecca had to say. Have you got anything different to say, though? Just because it's a different...
Okay, so I think on the defined contribution pensions, we have seen some very serious losses in the last few months, and the people who have been most affected by that, in some cases, have been the ones who are closest to retirement, the ones who are supposed to be protected. And I think there's some awkward questions to ask of some pension schemes. If you're in your early 60s, you were supposed to have had your pension fund de-risked. As Rebecca talked about, you're cashing in your investments to start drawing a retirement income. Well, in some cases, the pension funds that were trying to do that have actually ended up with the biggest losses. And so people who were about to retire are suddenly looking at maybe a 30% drop in their pension pot. And that then presents them with some very awkward choices about, can they now afford to retire? Are they going to have to keep on working a bit longer? I think one takeaway from all of this that we haven't heard already that I would absolutely emphasize is you need to, if you're not in a final salary pension, if you're in a defined contribution pension, you need to be aware of what is happening with it. You can't just ignore it, and particularly as you approach retirement, lift the lid one day and say, okay, what's in the pot? Certainly once you start getting into your 50s, you need to take an interest in where the money's invested, how much you've built up.
When I get to my 50s, that's the years and years to come. Years to come, Tom.
And if you're young and you're in 20s or your 30s, just keep saving money. And, the pension system is still robust and it all still works.
That's
and I think
lovely.
it's important to hang on to that.
Oh, good. Well, I'm in my 20s and 30s. Plus, actually add them together, that's about right. Tom McPhail, thank you very much. He's a pensions expert at the financial consultancy at Lang Cat. Also, Rebecca O'Connor, she was the head of pensions and savings at Interactive Investor. And also, Shankar Singham, thank you very much. Right, on the way, the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? Or is it totally ridiculous? What do you think? Labour's accelerated plan to decarbonise power by 2030 has raised concerns about the party's intentions among critics. Now, the opposition have also pledged to ban fracking despite the ongoing energy crisis. Is this the right way forward? What do you think? Would you be happy if someone fracked in your backyard? Is it even possible to achieve their achievement of 2030? All of that on the way after this break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's almost 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And it is time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? Now, critics have hit out at Labour's plans to decarbonise electricity by 2030, claiming that their policy would cause major blackouts and poverty in the country. Now, it would be interesting to see how they plan to do that. And this isn't to mention their promise to triple the amount of solar energy being used by 2040, which would be, I don't know how you do that without using carbon. I think you need to use carbon to make the solar panels in the first place. But is this the right way to go forward, particularly amid the ongoing energy and cost of living crisis, where members of the public are struggling to heat their homes? And just how expensive will this all be as well? I mean, we know that heat pumps are exorbitant. What do you think? How can these plans actually happen? Labour have also pledged to ban fracking once and for all. But how do they intend to account for the loss of energy source? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? I'm joined now by the former CEO of Energy UK, Angela Knight. Angela, thank you very much for joining me. So, Angela, they've got this vision that we'll all be using electricity, I'm presuming, so there's no fossil fuels or anything else like that. We're just using electricity. What changes to the infrastructure do you think that need to be made to actually make that possible? Because I'm thinking in my head, electric cars, nobody can have a petrol car by 2030. Is that what they're saying?
No, I think what they're saying is decarbonise the electricity market, not the energy market. So they're saying of all the means that we make electricity by 2030, we're only going to do it by green sources. That's as I understand it. And I do agree with you that they've sort of wobbled between saying energy and electricity, but actually they've come down on electricity. So that means you'll still have gas central heating if you've got it, gas cooking if you've got it, and you will also still be able to run your car. But it still is a huge challenge. And to my mind, it's being explained in a way that is, well, I'm going to use the expression less than honest.
To me, the way they've sort of described this is as though they don't quite understand what they're saying when they say decarbonisation, because we don't understand it, because they haven't really explained it. So it's very vague.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it like this, what they're saying is, well, right now, and it's quite correct, generating electricity from wind is much cheaper than generating electricity from gas. We've got the problems, long-term problems of gas are going to be there, not at the same situation as we have at the moment. But if the wind is cheaper, then let's go for wind, and that's how we're going to decarbonise the electricity. There is a very big but here, and the but is, what are you going to do if that is your policy for the times when the wind doesn't blow? Now, and some will say, well, you can store the electricity. Yes, you can, but you can't store it for a long time, and we don't have all the technology available to produce some sort of battery farms, battery factories, battery acreage to store electricity anyway. Others say, well, why don't you store it by electrolysis of water, so you've kind of got it stored as hydrogen, if you like, and then burn the hydrogen. Well, that's possible too, but the technology issues and the infrastructure issues there are so big that even the hydrogen industry, the pro-hydrogen people, are not talking anything like 2030 other than a trial. So the only way you can take carbon out of electricity production is increase wind, but also build small-scale nuclear reactors. Now, you can build one of those, say, every year or so between now and 2030. Well, we've only got whatever it is, about 8 years back, left. So say that's, say you can get 8 or 10 there. That's not enough. And that's going to cost you 20, 25, 30 billion. And then if on the other side of the divide, you're also going to build more wind farms and more solar, that's more billion. Well, right now, people are saying we're not prepared to pay these costs because all you're doing is adding it on the bill. And so what you pay for and who pays for it and how much is very, very important. And 2030 strikes me as just one of those conference announcements that you make, let's beat the other parties, we'll show you we can be greener than them. If they actually talked about how much we're all going to have to pay, whether it's on general taxation or on our bills, common sense would prevail and we'd have a sensible timetable. Because every time you build one quantum of wind or one quantum of sun, you've got to build exactly the same amount of backup. So it's double the cost.
Well, Angela, stay right there because I'm also joined by physicist and energy expert Brian Catt. Brian, the cat is back. But this time he's at his house. I'm getting a sneaky peek into how organised you are. It looks like you've got lots of containers and things, or not. Brian, what do you think then? Labour have this strategy, decarbonisation. They've now narrowed it down and said of electricity, which they didn't mention before when they mentioned it initially, by 2030. Is that even viable and is it affordable?
Well, I was just listening to a very sensible explanation of why it's not viable by Angela, who I'd love to have a meal with at some point and discuss all this. The point is that there's no point in putting renewables on the grid. So it's a stupid idea. No, they can't do it. The only way to sensibly and affordably decarbonise the grid, if you even needed to do that, which of course I don't accept because the science doesn't show that CO2 is a problem, is to put more nuclear on the grid as fast as you can go, because that's not subsidised, doesn't need backup, doesn't need storage, it just works. So, and we can't do that quickly. So it is just a nonsense. It's doubly net stupid.
But is it actually achievable? So, OK, we've established that nobody seems to think it makes any sense, but could you actually achieve it by 2030?
No, because you couldn't build stuff fast enough to do it. Where's, as Angela said, where's the backup coming from? You wouldn't do it with batteries because that would increase the cost of renewable electricity by a factor of 10. I've got a paper on that somewhere online if people want to look at it on SSRN. So it's completely daft. The only way you can back up renewables is with gas, which is expensive. You've got to, basically, that's how we do it at the moment. You have 100% gas backup for all the renewables, and renewables are not cheap. Renewables cost as much. The capex cost of renewables is actually per unit energy is 4 times nuclear. It's the same as nuclear per gigawatt, about 4 billion, and it's about 4 times that because of intermittency and life. So it's not even a cheap thing. It's just adding hugely to our bills to no actual benefit. So the cost benefit is non-existent. It's massively negative.
Well, let's get Angela back on, because you can obviously ask her out for that meal when she gets back on. So you guys seem to agree on this one. What about, though, fracking? Because people are talking about fracking. Angela, briefly, is that a viable... You said if you've got an amount of electricity, you need a backup equally as equal amount. Would fracking as a backup work?
Fracking will help security, and what I would do is a properly controlled fracking trial in the UK with the scientists and the engineers involved, and I'll just sort of move everybody to one side. Yes, we have got gas that we can frack, but how viable it is to frack it, I don't know, because there's the geological structure. And so do the trial first, do the analysis from the trial, and then decide. But fracking is more about energy security than anything else. Right now, a few more wells in the North Sea will help. And don't forget, you don't have to have absolutely sort of 90+% methane in your natural gas to run a gas main or to run a electricity generator. So there's more in the gas question than just do you frack or not frack, do you use or not use it. Or not. And by the way, I do accept the dinner date.
Oh, there you go. That's what we wanted to hear. And on that bombshell, I'll leave these two. Thank you very much, Brian, and also Angela. Great to talk to you both. They're energy experts, so they know a lot more than the Labour Party, by the sounds of it. And I'm wondering if the Labour Party consulted anybody on that one. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying with regard to it. Jack says, whatever the outcome of decarbonisation, it would be absurd to dispute that nuclear fusion is our only shot at survival in this energy crisis. I should have asked him about nuclear fusion. It didn't spring to the top of my head. He says decarbonisation is not viable at all, and goodness knows how high energy bills will go. Look at what's happened in the last year. Vera says it's a disastrous policy, like almost every other Labour policy. Yes, and it is they who may well pluck the torch from the faltering fingers of the Tory party. But you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? I'm struggling to find anybody who thinks it is. You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Fast approaching 5:35, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says she isn't resigning after announcing yet another mini-budget U-turn. This time, Liz Truss is reversing the government's policy to scrap a planned rise in corporation tax. Her press conference came shortly after sacking Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor and replacing him with former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Ms Truss says she's still committed to her plans for growth.
I have acted decisively today because my priority is ensuring our country's economic stability. As Prime Minister, I will always act in the national interest. This is always my first consideration. I want to be honest, this is difficult, but we will get through this storm, and we will deliver the strong and sustained growth that can transform the prosperity of our country for generations to come.
Royal Mail says it's planning to make up to 6,000 people redundant by next August after announcing losses of more than £200 million. The company says it started notifying workers of its plan, which aims to reduce the overall headcount by a total of 10,000. Royal Mail expects its full-year losses to hit £350 million. Detectives say the prime suspect in the murder of 19-year-old Leah Croucher, who went missing 3 years ago in Milton Keynes, killed himself in April 2019. Leah was last seen in CCTV footage in February of that same year. The suspect, Neil Maxwell, had previous convictions for sexual offences against women and girls. Thames Valley Police launched a murder inquiry after finding human remains and personal items belonging to Leah in a house that Maxwell was said to have been working at. The National Gallery in London says the Vincent van Gogh painting targeted by climate activists today is now back on display. 2 Just Stop Oil campaigners threw cans of tomato soup over the sunflower's portrait in protest against fossil fuels. They then glued themselves to the wall. Police say the painting was undamaged as it's behind glass, and the protesters have been arrested. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana after this short break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's just coming up to 40 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome. If you've just joined us, where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. It's time now for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030, is it viable? Now, critics have hit out at Labour's plans to decarbonise electricity by 2030, claiming that their policy would cause major blackouts and poverty within the country. Now, this is not to mention their promise to triple the amount of solar energy being used by 2040, which, again, it seems like another arbitrary number that's picked out without any real consideration as to how it will be achieved. But is this the right way to go forward, particularly amid the ongoing energy cost of a living crisis? I mean, I'm wondering who the Labour Party have asked, because most of the experts that we've asked so far, all of them have said that it seems a bit disingenuous or just simply unachievable. Lots of members of the public are currently struggling to heat our homes, and we're being told that net zero, which is the current thing, which I think is 2050, and losing electric cars by 2030, I mean, it's all just a bit much. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy, and it's apparently decarbonisation of electricity by 2030. Is it viable? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and entrepreneur Danny Kelly. All right, Danny, what do you think then?
Arbitrary is the word.
It is, isn't it?
If I was an advisor to Keir Starmer, I would say, whatever you do, Sir Keir, never take the knee again, because that's that's indelibly imprinted on your opponents, in your opponents' minds. And don't give a figure. What you should say, Sir Keir, is it's an aspiration. Of course we want to live on a cleaner planet. Who doesn't? But Sir Keir, whatever the hell you do, don't put a timestamp on anything. It's going to come back and haunt you. Say it's an aspiration. And also, Sir Keir, why don't you row back a little and say, because of that idiot in Russia having such a global effect on gas prices, row back and say, listen, I said 2030, we can only be in power potentially in January 2025. How the hell are we supposed to get this decarbonisation in 5 years? Please, Sir Keir, do not put a deadline on it. In fact, if you want to resonate with the working class man and woman who are struggling to pay their bills, just say, listen, do you know what? We produce 1% of global emissions. Precisely. I'm going to row back on this 2030 because I understand we can do whatever we want, but if China, if India, Pakistan, United States of America, what is the... We are a grain of sand on a beach.
China's building, as we sit here, 250 coal-fired power stations.
A year.
Yeah. I mean, under construction now. I mean, as you say, 1%, it's pathetic.
Well, they are doing those things to achieve the global production. So we are buying things from China, and they are the ones giving off the carbon. But it's the things that we're buying.
We're just exporting it, aren't we, to make us feel good?
So we're importing it from there, but we're using carbon to bring it here, and it doesn't really make much sense at all. I just want to pick up on something that Danny said, but I've forgotten now because you went on about something nonsense.
Sorry, is that probably...
It's Danny's fault. He went on
Sorry, I didn't want to put you on.
I came out with so many strong bullet
there
points.
There was too many. I wrote something down and I couldn't read.
It's like stopping a tidal wave. But you're right. All we have done to salve our moral conscience is export all the carbon emissions to places like China, it's said. But you see, now Labour is riding so high in the polls, people are going to start scrutinising that. It didn't matter what they said a while ago, but now it does, and people now have this very real prospect. And, of course, it's absurd. I mean, net zero by 2050 is absurd. We've got to go on having a mix, and yes, we've got to frack, and yes, we've got to build the little nuclear power stations. If only we had done that, started to do that 20 years ago,
Well, you know who stopped that, don't you? The Labour Party.
Yes, of course. If only we'd started doing that, we might by now have 5, 10, 15 of them online. But no, it's ludicrous, and he said it only at his last conference. So this isn't something, as I understand, it's not something that's been dredged up from, he said ages ago. He has just repeated this ridiculous...
They've got to stop with this nonsense. I mean, I think, what I was going to say is if they're going to give these sort of pledges, what we want is to say, when we have achieved this, this and this, then this and this.
Caveat it.
So when we've achieved 50% of, I don't know, electric charges or then, do you know what I mean? Actually have targets that mean that something is achieved before the next thing can be done, which means that we will then think that they've thought strategically as to when that thing will be achieved. But it just feels like they've plucked a number out of the air.
Of course they have.
And not asked anybody, because every expert so far, I haven't found one that says that this is achievable. They're all saying it's a bit disingenuous, it's nonsense, it's not going to happen. So I just want to know who they ask.
And what about this ludicrous business that we're now importing these wood chips from America? I mean, how mad is that to power a Dungeness or whatever it is? I mean, that's completely bonkers. And Keir Starmer added onto his statement about 2030, he said that this is going to save the average person, I think it was nearly 500, 400 and something.
What is the decarbonisation?
Apparently, yes. So that's your carrot, you see. Oh, you must go with this, guys, because you're going to save £500.
But, it's crazy.
It's not going to happen. It's unachievable.
That's if they're elected. 2025.
Yes, we mustn't fall into the trap of thinking this is a foregone conclusion, must we?
No, but why give this figure? That you mentioned about electric cars now in 2030. This is maddening. You can't buy a new petrol or diesel car on the 1st of January 2030. It's crazy.
I hate it because I don't want to go that way. Nobody asked me whether I'm quite happy. I'm not happy with it.
That's right.
I don't want to go that way.
No one knew what this
and now they're all going, I agree that we need to be careful in terms of, chucking plastic in the rivers.
Yeah.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. But I also think that if you're talking about reusing things, then you use what you have. And if you have natural gas, then why are you just wasting it? To me, that's quite wasteful. But this shows nothing without you and your views. So let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to tell us what they really think about the topics we're discussing. And today I'm joined by 4 of them. Yes, David Baum, who is joining me from Watford. Let's go to Watford. David, what do you think? 2030 decarbonisation of electricity.
I happen to say anything that comes out of Keir Starmer's mouth at this moment is hopeful hogwash. They had 20 years to do something about it when they were in power. They didn't. It's not feasible. In fact, I'm trying a new car. It's a hybrid because actually electric cars are not popular. Suddenly people realising they're actually wasteful and they're going to damage the environment because you can't get rid of the batteries. So how can you have decarbonisation if you can't actually get the basics right to start with?
Well, they haven't thought that far ahead, David, because they don't need to, because they're not quite in power yet. Right, let's go to Alan McNeely. He's there in Grimsby. Hello, Alan. Decarbonisation 2030. Is this realistic?
Afternoon, Nana. The only thing you could say about it, Nana, is that it's actually nice to see that the Labour Party have a policy. It's an absolutely absurd policy, but it's the first time I've seen them come up with a policy, so I suppose that's to their credit. But as to credibility for their actual plan, it's just complete and utter nonsense.
It feels like it is. I can't see how they can do it. Let's go over to Bedford and let's have a chat with Lee Webb. Lee, 2030 decarbonisation, that's what they're saying.
I think the policy is absolute poppycock. It's not going to happen. I've only got to go to Skegness for the day at the seaside, and you see all the windmills there. And on a windy day, only about 2 or 3 of them are working. So how the hell is all of this wind and this solar, and we're not the most sunniest country in the world, going to provide all of this power? We're looking at about 39% of our energy is provided by renewables, and that is including nuclear. I don't think we're going to be ready by even 2050, let alone 2030.
No, I don't think we will. Although it looks like you've got an antenna on your head there. I don't know what you've done to your hair there.
Yeah, a little bit chill.
What's he done there? What is that? And let's go to John Reid. He's there in Kidderminster. John.
Yes, hello, Nana. Well, I'm a long, long way from being an expert on energy and so on, but common sense is telling me that the chances of this happening are so low that it makes me wonder why he would say it. And I am inclined to think the way the Tory party is at the moment, whatever he says makes the headlines, and what he's trying to do is get the Green voter to vote Labour in the future in the hope that they might do a bit more than the Tories. So I think it's more politics than anything, but could you get decarbonisation by 2030? I don't know. No idea.
I don't think he does either. Thank you very much to all my GB great British voices, David in Watford, Alan in Grimsby, Lee in Bedford and John in Kidderminster. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Right, today I'm asking, is Labour's decarbonisation policy by 2030 viable? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Alex says, no, it's not. It's just a silly idea. Jonathan says, absolutely not. It's the same deluded policies that has caused the energy problems we have right now. Sally says, impossible. If you want to be warm and see when it gets dark, 30 years of diminishing nuclear, demonising fossil fuels and relying on wind and sun will barely cut it, even on a good day. Well, keeping your thoughts and keep them coming. Always great to hear you. But now I'm moving on to another story that caught my eye today. The Union for Borders, Immigration and Customs has penned a letter to the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, outlining their concerns towards the increase in the number of criminal migrants. Now, they claim this surge poses a significant risk to national security. And recent figures show that the number of migrants in total that have crossed the Channel has now surpassed 36,000. So is there an end to this crisis? What are your thoughts? I'm joined by Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly. Danny.
Is there an end to it? I don't see how there can be an end to it. I said a couple of months ago, I would love to see the beaches of northern France just patrolled, just have a saturation of soldiers and police, and as soon as a dinghy comes over a little sand dune, all they've got to do is get a dagger out and stab the dinghy. As simple as that. And it's so simple as far as I'm concerned.
You say that, but I watched a thing, and it was, I think it was the BBC, actually, so I'll give them credit for that one. I think it was them, I'm not sure, because... but anyway, what it was is I think they had some undercover reporters who went and pretended to be migrants and came across. I mean, I think it's the BBC. If I've got it wrong, I've got it wrong. But basically what was uncovered was that they were... the French were actually doing sort of shuttle buses, literally to the shore.
The French want them out. You can't blame them.
So they're kind of... So everyone's in cahoots for this thing. So we need to stop it, right?
Of course we know. Now that Liz Truss has decided that Macron is friend, not foe, surely we can... Exactly what you say. Why don't we have British troops on the French
But it's on their soil, isn't it?
I know, but let's come to an entente cordiale and we will come and help police all this. But as you say, the French want to get rid of them. But there is no control at all. The Tory government has done absolutely nothing. The whole situation is so crashingly out of control.
You can't blame them fully, though, because
of course a certain
tried.
percentage of the illegal immigrants who are coming in, of course a certain percentage of them are going to be criminal. By definition, a certain percentage of any group.
Well, it's a criminal thing to do, ultimately, isn't it, to do that? So ultimately, when they come here, they're criminals full stop, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what you think. But that's how I feel about it now, because I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick to my back teeth of seeing this constant influx of people who are coming literally to this country. And I'm happy that the people should be taken care of. But there was that fabulous castle, and they were going to stay in the castle. Thank goodness the owner asked why they wanted the castle and then decided that he wasn't going to do that.
Wow.
Somebody else might decide, oh, well, actually, I could do with that
That's
money.
an easy dollar.
Well, thank goodness he took a principled stand, because for somebody to come to you, the Home Office, to say, we'll take your entire hotel for a year, now that's pretty tempting.
Good money.
Good money. Anyway, he said no. But it's costing us, it was $5 million a day to house these people. It's probably more now.
It's
madness. The whole thing is madness.
It is madness.
And all our major cities are now over 50%.
It's just, there's nothing wrong with controlling and taking care of immigration, simply because we can't afford this level of immigration. It's quite clear.
Of course we can.
36,000, that's the size of somewhere like, is it Leicester or some decent-sized town? That's a whole town.
Oh, Leicester's a lot bigger. It's like Leamington Spa, 36,000. Yeah, Leicester's probably got 10 times that amount.
I don't know.
Your point is, in general, is correct about the size of Leicester, and it's just changed indelibly.
Of course
because Coventry, which is a city close to me, I'm not kidding you, 20 years ago it looked nothing like it does.
Well, it's
demographics.
It's all changing. I mean, I don't mind. I'm happy with that if it changes and people are coming here and contributing immediately and the money. But if it's just coming out of my taxpayers' money constantly,
well, it is.
If you can't control that, then how much more? I mean, it's a never-ending. It's an open checkbook.
There doesn't seem to be a will to control it.
Well, I think
that's what I find. Well,
no, there is.
They haven't done anything about it.
But we've got this liberal element that block every single opportunity and challenge, and we need to do something about that. I would close that off.
We've got Suella Braverman. Let's hope. She is our current hope.
Well, let's see. They all keep saying the same thing. They keep saying the same thing. I'm not seeing anything happen, but they should put me in charge.
Right. Now, that's it.
They'd be frightened.
Well,
Nana for Home Secretary.
There's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is good. Now, according to scientists, there are now 199 bodies who are currently being crypto-served or crypto-preserved. Crypto-preserved.
Cryo.
It's a silent...
Cryo.
It's a silent...
Cryo.
So you're
Cryogenics.
Cryogenics. Right, we've got it. We've got there in the end. I think people at home are probably shouting, cryogenics, for goodness sake. Now, this basically means that people have decided to put death on pause-ish, but they're already sort of dead in there, aren't they? So they're dead, and then they're going in there. By having their bodies covered in liquid nitrogen, many of these people suffered from terminal illnesses and hope to be brought back in future, so I presume they're still alive, and then they go in there. Wow. Let's see what my panel make of that. Would you opt for cryogenics? No, we're going to need a big capsule for you.
Would you like to see me back in 150 years on this panel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there. What I'm not sure is, and maybe somebody out there can tell us, You say these people are still alive?
Well, that's what
they're not alive.
They're not still alive.
Well, that's what
they're
I thought.
told they're
they're
still
not.
alive, but I bet you they're
Well,
not.
that's what I'm thinking, because
They're
if you're dead, you
hoping.
can't come back to life, so you have to go and be alive and be put...
So what we're considering is that they're alive in minus 50 nitrogen.
People with terminal illnesses, it said.
They hope that
but
when
they've
they
died
come
from it.
No,
I
but
don't
when
know. I don't know
they
whether they're
hope
still
that
alive or not, it hasn't said.
You don't think for one second they're in a tub of nitrogen alive, do you?
I don't know. I don't.
No.
I was
not.
But that's what I said initially. They can't be alive. But the way it's written now.
I wonder where these people are. I'll bet you a load of them are over in the States, and they have been told that if they do this now, when they come back in 150 years' time, or whenever they can come back, when there is a cure for what their problem is. It's pretty desperate state.
It doesn't make sense to me, because you'd sort of have to be alive-ish for them to do it, to bring you back. Otherwise, you're dead. Nobody comes back.
Here's what happens.
But I think it's hopeless.
Here's what happens. You drop dead, you stop breathing, immediately you are dumped in a vat of nitrogen.
A big old vat for you, Danny. Big old vat.
But you are dead. Of course you're dead.
They're being sold a dream. It's
well, it's time to quickly. I've got to catch up with Holly and Phil. We can't let them get off lightly, because last night the NTA, or National TV Awards, Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield won an award for their daytime show, with Philip crying tears of joy. We were all crying. We thought, what?
So much to us every year, especially this year.
From the audience, here's a clip. It's gone into freeze. Ah, that's annoying. I wanted to hear the boos. I was looking forward to that. Some people are smiling, and some people look. Somebody at the back was sneering in the clip. If you check us out on the app, you'll see it. But frankly,
honestly,
I mean, what do you think? Do they deserve that?
It's yawn, yawn, yawn. I mean, there's just a little loving, isn't it? Every year, and Ant and Dec have won it for the last, talking about 150 years. It's absurd. The whole thing.
It's the same people, the same thing all the time.
Cares,
but that's pretty much ITV all over. Right. Well, on today's show, I've been asking: is it time to let voters decide? Excuse me, in a general election? According to our Twitter poll, 59% of you say yes, it's changed. 41% of you say no. Big thank you to my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Thank you very much, Christine. And also broadcaster and entrepreneur Danny Kelly for joining me today. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 to discuss the top stories with broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and GB News presenter Father Calvin Robinson. All of that on the way tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thank you so much for your company. Now I'll leave you with the weather.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. It's a mixed picture this weekend. Sunshine and showers on Saturday. Most of us having a fine day on Sunday until some wet and windy weather arrives late on. It's a messy old pressure pattern as well. Low pressure systems up to the north, wiggling weather fronts down to the south, and more weather fronts in between. Each of these will really just bring a band of showers across the country. In between those bands of showers, we've seen some fine and bright weather through the day today, but I think that most of the rain will tend to peter out this evening. We'll keep some showers going over Wales and the Midlands, and then later in the night some more wet weather will wash across Northern Ireland into parts of Scotland. Ahead of that, it'll turn quite cold with a touch of frost likely across eastern Scotland. Further south, it'll stay fairly mild. A bit of a mishmash there on Saturday morning. Some quite heavy downpours for northern England and southern Scotland initially, but they should ebb away quite smartly, and then we'll see some good spells of sunshine in the east. More showers then come in from the west, and a gusty, blustery wind blowing around these western coasts as well, making it feel quite cool. In the sunny spells, across East Anglia in the southeast, 16 or 17 is possible, but generally a little cooler than that. Some heavy rain for the Midlands, spreading into East Anglia in the southeast late in the day. More showers then for Scotland and Northern Ireland during Saturday night. It stays blustery. It'll be probably a milder night than tonight as well. And then into Sunday, well, actually the weather's starting to calm down. For most of England and Wales, a dry, bright day. Any early showers over northwest England should fade, and same goes for Northern Ireland. And even across Scotland, the showers tending to ease off through the day. So quite a bit of fine weather around on Sunday, and temperatures again getting into the mid to high teens. But down to the southwest, things are changing. A new low, which will bring more wet and windy weather to Northern Ireland on Sunday evening, and most places as we go through Sunday night.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes and Kerr. Right, I'm going to start with a confession, because shall I tell you what I want to do right now? I literally want to put my head in my hands and just go, ugh. And if I was at home, that's what I'd be doing, but I'm at work, so I won't. So I'll carry on. The reason I want to sigh, though, is because I don't know about you, but what on earth is going on? Have you seen the news today? We have a new Chancellor. I've lost count, quite frankly, of how many we've had. But we've got another one. Kwasi Kwarteng has gone, and in comes Jeremy Hunt. I've spent the last hour reminding myself that that is indeed his name and not the one that I accidentally keep calling him. So I'm going to keep on track tonight, call him the right thing. Jeremy Hunt is our new Chancellor. I'm asking, what do you think to that? I also want to get into the whole situation around Liz Truss. Where do we go from here? Did you see that press conference? Very short, to the point. Many people not happy with that. Personally, I thought she did a good job. Many people are disagreeing, asking her question after question, basically about when she's going to resign. This is what I'm saying. I told you, it just makes me want to groan. But I'm asking, what next for this wonderful country? What and who and how? Tell me your thoughts. Let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's headlines, and we'll get back to all of that in just a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says she isn't resigning after announcing yet another mini-budget U-turn. This time, Liz Truss is reversing the government